Hey, it's James Lynch. In today's video, I wanted to talk about the Nina Drama and Helen Yee beef that happened this past week in the MMA media industry. There's no UFC this week, so a lot of focus was on this whole thing and the whole Ian Gary stuff. I'll talk about the Gary thing in another video, but this is something that I think is kind of interesting and something that I think people really don't know the full backstory on. And you guys know I love covering stuff that goes on in the MMA media space, so that's why I wanted to tackle the subject. And I know what a lot of you were thinking, James, why didn't you do this a couple days ago? Did you hear my voice on here a few days ago? It was not sounding too good. I was a little bit under the weather. Voice still isn't 100%, but I wanted to take the time today to talk about this before this kind of loses focus. And let's first start with how this all got into like a big thing here. And really it started with this Twitter comment from this guy who's obviously got like a really bogus Twitter name, some guy who's anonymous, saying Nina is kicking your ass, disengagement, farming game, Helen, step it up a notch. Which, can we just talk about this? Because I see this stuff with talking to other journalists and other people in the space, people saying stuff like this. I get people coming to me saying, oh, your views should be higher in your interviews. Like, mind your own business. Like, the only people who should care about the views on interviews or how they're doing in terms of numbers is the person doing the interview themselves. So right off the bat, you got this moron who knows nothing about the media industry. And Helen chimes in here, Helen Yee, who does, very, very good work in the MMA space, going, I'm not trying to engagement farm or compete with anyone, so shut the F up. I hate social media anyways. I've been focused solely on training. Stop comparing different people, which I couldn't agree more. Like, why do people care about this? The guy was just trying to start something. Personally, if I was Helen, I would not engage with someone like this who clearly has no idea what goes on in the industry. And I know I'm not one to talk. I do fall victim to trolls sometimes as well too, in terms of engaging with them. So I'm not one to talk, but that would be the first thing, is to just ignore this. But this started a snowball effect on Twitter with the fact that Nina actually came to Helen's defense here right off the bat, saying, where is it? People have tried to pit us against each other since the beginning, Helen. Yee is an actual journalist and athlete. We're both bring something different to the MMA community. I'm tired of seeing this negative stuff. It's getting old. Put some respect on Helen Yee's name. So it's like, okay, good. Like these two women, they're supporting each other in the industry. All is good. Then this other tweet comes out here, and where there's kind of this back and forth, I should say, where Helen goes, it's unreal the amount of people who love negativity and compare us every time I log into this app before minding their own business. By the way, people might not know this. So Helen's kind of taken a step back a bit. And I know Helen, by the way. I talked to her. We've worked in the industry for a number of years together. So I know Helen quite well. And she does a great job. And her channel is one of the best out there for interviews. She's one of the big reasons that, in my opinion, Sean Strickland has blown up extremely well, because he's done so many in-person interviews with Helen. But for those who don't know, that Helen is basically like taking a step back. She's actually trying out for the Olympics for swimming. So she's made all these different changes. So she hasn't been as active in the space, which is why that guy's comment is completely dumb anyways. Helen's not doing as much media as she's used to because she's training for this. So that guy didn't even know that. And he's just trying to cause a stir. And that's certainly what it did here. But Helen's basically saying that she, doesn't log into the app as much anymore because she doesn't have time. So she kind of talks about that. She says, by the way, I tried texting you months back after we reached out so we can have a better settling than online. She says Nina didn't get back. She says, I DM'd you after that troll made up a rumor about us beefing and I didn't hear from you. Then I approached you in person to let you know I reached out and you didn't seem into it. Then you eventually responded to my initial DM, which I responded, and we exchanged numbers and message, and you took a minute to get back to me, so I figured you weren't into it. By the way, stuff like this should be handled offline. That's just my personal opinion when you're dealing, because people are going to eat all this up and take what they want from it and everything else. So right off the bat, I mean, this could have all been avoided of what's about to happen next if they had just talked offline. Again, I'm not perfect either, but that's just, the advice that I would probably look into. So Helen responds to this saying, respectfully, you just read this 4 minutes ago when I messaged you in July and I texted you, which you still never texted me back. I had a swim meet in Oregon. When you approached me in person, you blindsided me in public, which I can understand. You shouldn't be talking to someone in public where there were other people around being nosy, which I can get. Listen, if people are beefing in public, you don't want to do it when there's a bunch of other people around. So I understand Helen's perspective here, which I explained to you, and you seemed to be understanding at the time. I texted you and responded to your DM, but never heard from you. So I figured you didn't want to meet up. I tried. Best of luck to you. Keep killing it. So she kind of explained, like, puts clarification on the situation, but also, throws a little bit saying like, I at least tried. This then spiraled into something where Nina goes on this huge thing, and I'm not going to read the entire thing, but she talks about how Helen never DM'd her back. Okay, this is where this whole beef started, and everyone was running with this online because it's all public. And look, Nina's literally called Nina Drama. Like, I'm sure it's good for her brand, getting more people and attention on this. But it's just one of those things that really snowballed, and it was front and center. Everyone was talking about it and what happened. And all this started from was some moron fan who was trying to compare the two. So a lot of people think that this is just where all this happened, that there was some rumors made up before and all that, but this actually goes a little bit deeper here. And by the way, I should mention the latest thing with these two is that they're not beefing. I think Nina said something like, "I'm on the way to my pool to meet Helen. Happy Thanksgiving." And then Helen responded back saying, "Just finished practice, waiting for you. I brought floaties too, just in case. Happy Thanksgiving," like as a joke. So it seems like they're good now, but this thing all got blown out of proportion because it was public. That's the big reason. But there is one thing that happened a little while back from people that I've spoken to that I think is where this whole thing started. And that's what I wanted to talk about in today's video, because I think people have just seen this part of it. There's another part of this as well. So before I show you what I'm about to show you, we need to point out the obvious here. And if this isn't obvious to everyone out there, Nina Marie Danielle, and Helen Yee are two completely different people in the industry in terms of what they're doing in terms of content. Helen Yee is an actual journalist. She is going out there getting interviews. She's independent. She goes to gyms. She gets interviews. She does the regular sort of interviews that I do and so many other people in this industry do. The typical interviews that you see on most YouTube channels here. Nina Drama is a YouTube content creator. She's not a journalist. And I'm not saying that as like a mean thing that, oh, she's not credible or anything like that. I'm saying that they do different things. Nina Drama can joke with the fighters and say different stuff. She's not a journalist. If she was a journalist, she's, you know, doing what everyone else is doing, which is the typical questions and her style of interviews and all that different stuff. Now, I mentioned Helen being independent. Nina, to some degree, is being backed by the UFC, and I'm going to show you a few examples here, and there's nothing wrong with this. I just wish Nina would kind of just own this instead of kind of doing what she's doing here. So you can see here from, you know, being promoted by the UFC, right? The UFC is not promoting any other journalists. They're not even promoting Brett Okamoto, who's like a TV partner, right? ESPN has the TV rights. You know, you don't even see the UFC really promoting Brett's interviews or Mark Ramondi's interviews on ESPN, but this is the UFC's YouTube channel, and they have a community note promoting an interview with Tom Aspinall, which I'm like 99% sure the UFC set that interview up. That does not make you a journalist if you're getting exclusive access to fighters through the promotion. It's just not the way it works. That doesn't make you a journalist. That makes you a host and a content creator. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's what Nina is. She's not the same as Helen. Helen is a journalist. Nina is a host. You also look at all these interviews that she's got, right? These are all big name interviews. Now, for the regular people like myself and Helen and so many other peoples, we have to go through managers. We have to go through the fighters directly. Nina, for the most part, is getting this set up through the UFC. You look at all these names that she's talking to, they're big names. Also, she's getting to go to like New York to interview Yuri. Like you see this right here. This is a backstage interview that the UFC's provided access for. I can't just go backstage and interview Yuri like this. It has to be something set up through the UFC. So that's what they're doing here. Same thing with Aspinall. Same thing with Alex Pereira. She got to go to Abu Dhabi as well. There's the, I don't think it's on here, but there was the one with Chimaev. I think that's on her Instagram. Let me just go have a quick look at that. Look at this thing with Khamzat Chimaev. This was filmed in Abu Dhabi. I mean, it costs a lot of money to go and, travel to Abu Dhabi, get a hotel and all that. I'm almost positive the UFC is paying for all this, right? If they're promoting her content, like I'm showing you here on their YouTube channel, then most likely she's being backed by the UFC. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's different than what Helen's doing, where she's not taking a dime from the UFC because she's actually a journalist. Nina is, by some extension, a host for the UFC. So that's kind of the difference between the two. So that's why this guy's comment, even to begin with, saying Nina's kicking your ass in engagement. Well, Helen's not getting interviews set up through the UFC. You know how much easier it is to interview fighters when they're being given to you? That's the big difference here that I don't think people understand. Helen's actually having to go to the gyms independently and interview these fighters. Nina's just like, the UFC's like, hey, we got an interview with Alex Volkanovski. Do you want to go interview him? Sure. I'll go to New York or wherever and I'll get the interview, or Abu Dhabi, right? So that's where it's a bit different. So it's a different thing here is what I'm trying to get at. Like I said, Helen is a journalist. Nina is simply a host here. And there's nothing, wrong with that, like I said, but it's just, there is a difference between the two there. So now that I've explained the difference between Nina and Helen, I do need to point out some of the tweets that Nina's made over the last couple months. This is where this beef goes beyond just the interaction that happened last week. So there's this tweet that took place back in June. Okay, so this is how far back we're going. I'm going to read the tweet right now. Crazy what a good pair of natural boobs and fun personality can do for your career. Thank you guys for the supports and the hate. This is only the beginning. Thank you, UFC. So she's even acknowledging the UFC for the love and the support. So the UFC is backing her, right? Helen's not getting backed by the UFC. Wouldn't like to be doing anything else. Nina, the mother of incels. So the key thing here is she says, crazy what a good pair of natural boobs are. And she capitalized natural. Who has fake boobs, or who used to have fake boobs? That was Helen. Helen got her boobs removed, her breast implants removed when she started training for swimming, but Helen did have breast implants. So you can, where is it here? Where's the post I had? Those are fake. She talked about this. I mean, this is nothing new. So it kind of looked like back then, Nina was kind of taking a shot at Helen, because what other women reporters have breast implants that are covering the UFC? So this is where this all started. I think a lot of people forget this happened. And I remember hearing this from other people saying that, oh, Nina was taking a shot at Helen. And I had no idea what they were talking about. I just heard about this from other media members. And then I actually looked up the tweet, and this does kind of look like she's going after Helen. So that's where this all started. Like, people thinking that this just happened because the fans were pitting them together. That's not true. This is a tweet from back in June that I think really set things off. That's my understanding anyways. I could be wrong about this, but that's what I think has happened. And Nina's had a habit, for whatever reason, of kind of going after the media, the traditional media, like myself and other people. Here's a tweet that she had here. Some guy made a TikTok video saying that she was an industry plant. I don't believe that, but again, she is working for the UFC. She says, me being an industry plant is a valid theory, but how come nobody says Nina Drama is blowing up MMA media because she's entertaining, creative, works hard, and most fighters enjoy doing these interviews more than doing the same repetitive interviews. So she's kind of taking a shot at like traditional media, repetitive interviews and all that. But what she's got to understand is, like, we're doing two different things. Like, Nina can go there and ask fighters about their sex life and all this different stuff because that's her thing, right? Like, you can kind of get away with doing that style of an interview. For the rest of us, we have to ask the regular fight questions, which, by the way, I know people say that's boring. And I know Terrence McKinney went down here and said, can't tell you how tired I am of someone asking, were you actively looking for a finish? I mean, that is a dumb question. But yes, there are repetitive questions from media members like myself and other people. But people want to know that, whether people are betting on fights, whether people just want to have a curiosity of how a fighter's training camp went. Those are all valid questions. So in some ways, this tweet is kind of taking a shot at the traditional media side of things. And again, I've been very clear about this. There's traditional media, like the journalists, the people who work for MMA Fighting, MMA Junkie, people like myself. And then there's sort of the YouTube content creator side of things, which is like Nina. And then you've got, like, obviously your big YouTube channels like MMA Guru, Lucas Tracy, all these different people, right? Which are more like content creators. That's kind of what Nina is, more on the side of the content creator, where, you're not playing by the same rules as journalists are, right? You don't have to wear a suit or dress up. You can kind of, be a personality as opposed to being sort of a traditional journalist. So that's kind of the difference there. And I'll reiterate it again, guys, in this video, just so people are clear. I got nothing against Nina. Good for her. I think it's great that she's found a lane. She's taken a liking from the UFC, and they're like pushing this, content, which is totally different than what a lot of people are doing here. The point of this video is not to talk about how bad Nina Drama is. It's just pointing out the difference, which I think there are fans out there who don't know the difference between what Helen Yee does and what Nina does. So that's one thing I think gets lost here, is that people got to understand Nina Drama is a personality, Helen Yee is a journalist, and they're two completely different ways of covering the sport. Now, it seems like Helen and Nina are all good now, right? Which is fine. I don't like seeing people beef in the media. I think there's a lot of great people in this industry that do some great work, and Helen and Nina are two examples of this. So I'm glad they kind of figured it out. But I think this whole thing could have been avoided, like I said, if they would have just got on the phone, met up for coffee. They both live in Vegas. They could have easily done this. So that's kind of the main point here. But the thing I really wanted to get across here is the fact that what Helen and Nina do are two completely different things. And it's just another reminder to ignore idiots like this. And like I said, I'm guilty of this too. It's something I got to work on. I'm just very I like being interactive with people, and I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure Helen's the same way, where she just wants to, be sincere with people, and people take advantage of that. So that's what this moron did here, and it's super annoying. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. What did you think of this whole situation this past week? What do you think of the difference between, journalists and content creators? And also, what do you think of my whole, discovery here about, their beef and how far it went back? Because that's kind of what I thought. That's what I've been told, is that this is where all this started, was this tweet that Nina put out a little while back, kind of talking about, hey, I'm natural, you're not. Do you guys think that's true or not? Or do you think that could have been just a general thing that she put out there? Follow me on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, @LynchOnSports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.